Gen Z is entering the workforce with new perspectives and expectations.
In this podcast, we're here to listen to their stories and experiences, their successes and frustrations, and help employers understand the mindset and perspectives of the up-and-coming workforce.
Employers can't dictate what their young employees find meaningful. What they can do, however, is empower them to create their own sense of purpose and authentic connections.
Our curriculum is designed to help them do exactly that. East Valley Leader Lab is committed to paving the way for more curious, engaged, and connected young professionals in the workplace.
Hello, I'm Tim Eskew. This is Amanda Stradling, and we are the East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work. If our content resonates with you, we hope you'll click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcasts.
Today's guest is someone who has dedicated his career to transforming how we support students with dyslexia, and the results speak for themselves. Russel Von Brocklen, widely known as the Dyslexia Professor, merges cutting-edge brain research with proven literacy strategies to help students not just catch up, but thrive. While in graduate school, Russel combined insights from Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz with James Collins' Strategies for Struggling Writers, creating what would become the writing method, a structured research-based approach that led to his initial program being funded by the New York State Senate and owned by the SUNY Research Foundation. Russel's work has shown that highly motivated high school students with dyslexia can improve their writing skills by as much as 7 to 8 grade levels in a single academic year. Through his half-circle process, students have also achieved gains of 1 to 3 grade levels in both reading and writing in just a few months. He created the specialty-first literacy blueprint and word analysis-first tools that are helping students unlock their abilities. With over a decade of experience, Russel has presented at major conferences, such as the Everyone Reading Conference in Manhattan and the Learning Disability Association of New Jersey. Today, he's joining us to share how young workers can harness his techniques to turn their neurodiversity into their superpower. So thank you so much for being here, Russel.
Thanks for having me.
So, Russel, we will soon enough be getting to how we can relate neurodiversity to Gen Z thriving in the workplace. But before we do that, you've got some very impressive accomplishments, and we're interested in learning a little bit how you came to this line of work.
Well, I had the same problems that a lot of Gen Zers are having when I decided to enter the workforce. I wanted to know how politics worked. So I had a kind of a paid internship with the New York State Assembly in the late 90s. And when I entered, I gave them my documentation and showed that I had a first grade reading and writing level. And they looked at that and said, this isn't going to work. So they put me in Majority Leaders Program and Counsel's office where there were 3 administrative assistants. And I had a very good internship. And at the end, we had to do a major research project for the academic portion. And a standard accommodation for me back then was giving oral presentations instead of writing a report. They recommended 15 credits of A-, but then when they sent that for the first time and the only time in the history of this program, that's been going on for like 50 years, 150 plus students a year, they recommended 3.67. The political science department at the State University of New York Center of Buffalo looked at that and said, we don't like these accommodations. So here's your 15 credits of F.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and that's still on, 27 years later, that's still on my record.
Wow.
And I said, never again. So I said, how do I force myself to finally learn to read and write? And how can I show this to others? And I talked to a bunch of college professors and they said, kind of laughing, well, if you really want to force yourself, go to law school. So I said, okay. I went to work with Professor Warner, who was a dyslexic law professor. And what they do if you don't know what you're doing, they just try to use something called the Socratic method. If there's a famous movie called The Paper Chase, if you want to know more about it. And if you don't know the answer, they keep asking you questions to embarrass the heck out of you,
Oh,
to
wow.
force you to learn to argue. Yeah, it's horrible. That didn't happen to me. What I found is once dyslexics reach grad school, like the generations before me, is that we automatically become top for class day one.
Oh,
And he,
interesting.
yeah, well, and that's what we'll discuss. We get into discussing. You'll find this interesting. So what happened is he started asking me questions, and I responded. Everything slowed down and organized for the first time in my life. And then I leaned forward, and I was essentially shouting at him, and he was leaning forward and essentially shouting at me, which is how animated these discussions. That's considered still polite, and it went on for 15 minutes. He knew where I was going. I knew where he was going. I couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat me. He said at the end, Russell, in the interest of time, I have to move on, but you couldn't be any more correct. I solved my reading within a month. The writing took another couple of years. And then I took that and I went back and I got funded by the New York State Senate to work with the best and brightest. I wanted to know what I could do with the ideal, highly motivated, highly intelligent, college-bound dyslexic students. And what happened cost New York State taxpayers less than $900 a kid, one class period a day for the school year. They increased from middle school writing to average of entering graduate students. They all went to college. They all graduated, no accommodations, GPAs between 2.5 to 3.6. The best dyslexic college at the time was Landmark College. My program was 3x the effectiveness for less than
Wow.
1% of the cost and less than 1/25th of the effort.
That's awesome.
So that got me started. But then when I went to present this in New York City, I thought I was done. I thought I did something amazing. I was wrong. I had to shift it in two areas. I had to make it available for typical students, which required a whole different shift, which took me a few years to
Oh,
figure out.
definitely.
And then I came, and just what the results of that are. I worked with a student called Reed and his mother, full permission to tell the story. He increased, he was two grade levels behind in reading and writing. His mom, about 3 sessions a week, about half an hour each. In 6 months, he jumped over 3 standard deviations. He's at grade
Wow.
level. In public school now, everything's fine. She did in 6 months what private schools take longer to do. And then I was told by senior professors, they wanted students to know something called the craft of research, which is critical for students being successful, not being unemployed in Gen Z now. They wrote a book called The Craft of Research, came out in '95 to teach PhD students how to do their dissertations. Now in its 5th edition, it's down to advanced high school kids. Why this is so important for Gen Z is it tells you how to do essentially artificial intelligence. You break things down to context. I show that to 9 and 10-year-olds. State a problem. I do that in middle school. And then a solution that is so original that it's very valuable to your employers. I do that in high school. Students trained in that area can go, to give you an example, I had a Gen Zer who came to me, one of my former students last year. He hated artificial intelligence, couldn't stand it. Contacts me. He says, I got to do artificial intelligence. I don't know anything about it. I said, you've been trained in the craft of research. Go talk to it, type with it, just play around with it until you figure out context. He came back, did that. Go do problem. He comes back. I hate this. And I said, welcome to the grown-up world. All right. And I said, go back and do the solution. He did. His boss is flipping through the responses. He wanted the kids to come up with something that would be useful to the company. I can't use this, can't use this, come to his. We can use this. Within a week, he's training his peers on how to do artificial intelligence, knowing nothing about it beforehand,
Wow.
because he could apply the craft of research.
That's incredible.
Russell, just a small aside here. Are you familiar with the book David and Goliath by the famous author that wrote Outliers? I can't remember it, but I'll put it in the show notes. He has a couple chapters in that book just talking about how people with dyslexia have to solve problems in a different way, and all the incredible creative breakthroughs that have come out of that. And you're just reminding me of that. And AI in that sense is an opportunity for dyslexic people because nobody's used to it and we don't really know how to use it, and they're going to come up with different ways. So that's what was coming up for me.
How you use it is the craft of research. And here's the advantage of dyslexia. First of all, this is the top book in my field, Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz from Yale. This is dyslexia in one graph. Do you see how the back part of my brain has next to no neural activity, but yours is going crazy? But the front part of my brain's 2.5 times overactive?
Yes.
Yes. So what I use is a version of what Yale recommends. It's word analysis followed by articulation. But when you're working with neurodiverse, what you have to understand is you have to focus on their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability, okay? And then you work with them not on general to the specific, which is like asking them to grab fog. You work from them from a specific question going out. Then word analysis followed by articulation. Once you do that, everything works. You go against that, it doesn't.
Cool. So as you know, Russell, we are this season interested in how Gen Z is doing in the workplace. And so to start to make that connection, we're curious, are you seeing more neurodivergent Gen Zers? And is it showing up earlier in their careers?
Yes. It's simply because the diagnosticians are actually diagnosing neurodiversity so much earlier. They're starting to get much better support than previous generations. And when they enter the workforce, the issue is now employers have no patience for training. They have no patience for anything. They want you to enter day one and start producing the minute you walk in. I mean, before you even take your coat off, they want you thinking about how you can improve things. And it's crazy. So one of the advantages for Gen Z neurodiverse is if they get an employment position in their speciality where they're really good, they tend to really excel and they're really focused on it. They tend to come in, especially after I work with them and they get to become competent in the craft of research, they can automatically start discussing what the problems are, where they want to go, and how to come up with solutions that matter.
But without those tools, even in their field of interest, they may still be lagging, right? And they may have trouble producing workable results. But these tools really help kind of unlock that for them, right?
It really is the difference between employability and not employability, because what I found is that I'm an Xer. So the baby boomers are retiring. My generation's going into the C-suite. All right. And a conflict with my generation and the Gen Z is that a lot of them want to be on their phones a lot more. They want to have more personal time. There's a culture clash. All right.
Okay, yeah.
So how do we get around that culture clash? My generation needs to be more empathetic to the needs of Gen Z, but they're finding that's hard to train us older dogs, okay, to do new tricks. What I can tell Gen Z is when you're coming into the workforce, you now have an abundance of information that didn't exist in previous generations. Even millennials didn't have this. What you want to do is to research the company, especially since you use ChatGPT for everything. What I noticed about Gen Zs is they use ChatGPT for like any decent life decisions. They run it through it. All right. What I would tell you is to go in and really look at what you're good at. Find a problem that the company is having. All right. And then, as they said, I would get a copy of the craft of research and work through it. I just found a way of making it more accessible. All right. Go in there with some solutions that you can start working with. And when I've noticed that when students did that and they did it immediately, they came in with anything that could add some immediate value to the company. It doesn't matter how small it is. They tend to get a different vibe from their from their millennial Gen Z boss or Gen X bosses. And at that point, once they've shown their value, the older generations are willing to give you, how do I put it, cut you a lot more slack. So if you
Yeah.
want to come in later, telecommute or whatever, you kind of got them because you are the one that can provide the value. And
Yeah,
it's a
then they
lot
start
easier of a
making
conversation.
the accommodations, and then they start providing the training and helping set them up for success. But maybe they're not as invested until they see that spark of value, right?
Right, because what you're having is there are some people in your generation who are doing this. And what is shocking is I'm just going to use Anthropic as an example. They've just crossed, I think they're going to be doing like 5 billion a year. They're like growing incredibly fast. And they're doing it without a lot of people.
Oh,
Even
interesting.
even the traditional tech, go back 10 years when the millennials were going, everybody thought becoming a coder would be great. Now just look at what the big companies are doing. They're firing people en masse, mid-level, senior people, everybody because they don't need them anymore. Okay. So especially for you neurodiverse Gen Zers, best thing I can do is that you have so much more information than we ever had before. Learn the craft of research, figure out something, go in, and then I have seen this numerous times with some of my former students. One of them said, "Well, my mom isn't doing the best. I want to work from home, and that means I got to go to a different state." But she just gave an idea to the company that saved a $500,000. Their policy is nobody works from home. You have to come into the office. She got the exception.
Interesting. So while we're talking about some of the challenges that Gen Z is facing, and some of the adaptations they can make, what are some specific strengths that you think that they're coming in with naturally?
Especially when you're talking about neurodiverse students.
Yes.
What you're finding is, remember I showed you the overactive front part of the brain?
Mm-hmm.
You're coming in to where when we're in what, again, I call our speciality, our area of extreme interest and ability, we excel in that area. And to give you an example, one of the most common neurodiverse issues is attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I'll just translate in one thing that happens when I teach dyslexic students. I will start this process with this book, by far the most popular. It's on Walt Disney's biography. It's 1,000 pages, designed for 17-year-olds. I'll give that to a 10-year-old kid.
Oh, wow.
What they wanted, Disney's the largest entertainment company on the planet. But going back to the founder who they think Walt Disney was dyslexic, they think. Have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
You walk into Main Street, USA. People think that's, do you feel the Disney magic?
Oh, absolutely.
The Disney magic is based on two universal themes. So in that Main Street, USA, that represents Marceline, Missouri, where Walt was between 5 and 10. And he spent the rest of his life trying to recapture that moment. So once you can discover the two universal themes, the first one's very easy to find. The second one, I've never had a parent find it. The kids tell them what it is. All right. Once they understand those two universal themes, I've had students who would say, okay, Disney, if you want to do anything new, how would you provide the traditional Disney magic, the traditional things from the founder? And they could generate ideas. Now, if one of those ideas could be worth $1 million, $10 million. So what I do to show them how to read and write is directly applicable if they ever want to work for the company.
Very cool.
That's how, yes. So that's an example of how understanding the universal themes for Disney and then taking that through the craft of research projects and then say, here's an innovative solution, how Walt would have probably solved this. And the idea may be worthless, but what I gave them is a process so they could spit out idea after idea And sooner or later, one hits, and as I said, it could be worth 100,000, could be worth 10 million. You have $1 million improvement. What's that worth to Disney? What does that do to help you move up the ladder? And that's just one example.
That's wonderful. So they're leaning into their specific interests, right? But you've given them a tool to look more deeply at it and to craft these research questions and to come up with tangible, actionable solutions and offers that they can make.
Like when we were dealing with like ADD kids, so let's say again they wanted to work for Disney, there is no attention deficit problem when they're in their speciality. They are actually so hyper focused, it's beyond what most general ed students could ever produce. They're so incredibly focused. All I did is the craft of research is what they want you to use. The problem is it's a very unwieldy book because let's face it, it was designed for doctoral students. And combining it with the processes and overcoming dyslexia, I just made it something so simplistic that I can teach it to 9-year-olds.
That's awesome. Can you tell us some more about some specific 5-minute routines that you teach to 9-year-olds, middle school students? Some of the people that will go on to have great careers.
Okay, so typically what happens is when I'm dealing with the younger kids, is they're essentially writing a bunch of randomly placed misspelled words. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
How do we fix that? What we do is, first of all, we find out what the kid's speciality is. All right. And let's just take a typical student that I've actually, do you know a dyslexic student who ever had that problem?
I have a child that is very much dyslexic and ADHD, and all this resonates so much.
Okay, I changed her name to protect her identity. So what's her new name?
We'll call her Claire.
Claire. Okay, what's Claire's speciality?
She loves story and imagination. She's very creative. And even though reading is a struggle for her, she will listen to audiobooks all day long. And she creates some really wonderful fantasy worlds of her own. And when the ADHD will allow her to, she can really craft and write some really wonderful stories. So I would say that's one of her strengths. Another is probably her logic and her ability to argue her points. She's got some strengths there too.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want you to imagine back when she was in elementary school. Random writing, and we're going to correct the randomly placed misspelled word thing. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is have Claire type out hero +, what are we talking about? We're going to replace hero with Claire. Claire +, what are we talking about? Claire +, stories. See how we got there?
Yes.
Now, what we have to do is replace the +. All right. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I deliver when I present this at major dyslexia conferences. And most of the teachers get it wrong. I'm going to ask you very specific questions that are so simple. If you answer them directly, you'll be fine. If not, it's not going to work. Do you think I'll be able to fool you?
Maybe. We'll try.
Okay, well, let's see. So here's my question for Claire. We have Claire +, stories. Here's my question. Does Claire like or dislike stories?
Well, she likes stories, right?
Okay, so go ahead and give me complete the sentence. Claire +, stories. What's the sentence?
Claire likes stories.
Yes, but that's not what I asked. I asked, does she like or dislike? As an educated person, you automatically added the S and corrected it. She's dyslexic. She doesn't know how to do that.
That is true, actually. Yeah.
So if you're Bill Gates' grandkid, he would send you to a Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language school. That's $75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years to fix this. Okay. Here's how we do it a lot easier. I would ask Claire what she wrote out loud, to read it out loud. She would say, Claire like stories, because that's what I asked her. Now that's Claire. Does that sound generally correct? No. Then I tell her to fix it. Claire likes stories. We do that for 10 likes and 10 dislikes. All right. You keep going until it's done perfectly. Like and dislike is a form of word analysis, overactive front part of the brain. Then we go because, reason one. And I say, Claire, why do you like stories? And what's the simple reason why she likes stories?
She would probably just say, because they're fun.
Because they're fun. Claire likes stories because they're fun. You got a lot of misspellings there. Here's how we fix that. Before she puts the period down, she can rewrite anything. I'm sorry, before she puts the period down, if she asks you a question and she misspelled a word, then she just has to retype that word. When she puts the period down, if there's a spelling error or a major grammatical error, she has to retype everything. So what does she do? She drops the period. Oh, you have a spelling mistake. So now she has to retype everything. That's usually between 3 and 13 times. As she's going through that, she says she keeps concentrating more and more. I'm not going to make that mistake. And she keeps doing it. To help alleviate the stress, you can say, Claire, you made a silly mistake or a silly error. And then as she keeps going, she's concentrating more and more to the point of around 10 to 13. She's concentrating so much, you might see sweat coming down her forehead. In that extreme concentration to when she finally fixes it, that's where the magic happens. And you keep doing that of those 20 things until it's all spelled correctly and grammar correct. Then you do reason one and reason two, then reason one, reason two, and reason three. That's 80 sentences. The older the child is, the quicker they will pick it up. The exact opposite of Orton Gillingham.
Oh,
so what did I just tell you? Yeah, what I just told you in that 5 minutes is how you can take a student from writing at the kindergarten level to the end of second, beginning at third grade level. And just again, note the science real quick. Here's the science again. Front part of the brain is 2.5 times overactive. That's word analysis followed by articulation. Like and dislike is a form of word analysis after because the reasons are a form of articulation. See how that works?
Yes, definitely.
That's
so
simple.
This has some tie-ins with our leadership curriculum at the East Valley Leader Lab. Our first 5-week course is called What Do You Really Care About? And it's all about using embodiment practices that we repeat, just as you're repeating your techniques, to help them feel and get in touch with what they genuinely, honestly care about. And so when it ties, that's kind of like tying back to their field of speciality and their fixation, right? So we're kind of doing that as well. And then, we believe that practice is a big part of any part of growth and really making a truly embodied change beyond just, a surface level behavioral something that you're doing for work, but it changes who you really are and how you're really showing up when you repeat and practice. And it becomes ingrained. It becomes a new way of being. So yeah, we're incorporating some of these basic concepts as well. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, teachers tell it to me all the time that I'm basically doing this. And I said, yeah, I'm just switching the order so it's a lot more effective.
Which probably works better when someone's brain is working so differently, right?
Yeah, as it clearly shows, my brain and your brain are so completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
So we want to ask you about another one of your techniques. But before we do, there was something I want to call out to our audience, and I should have done it right before that last section. But I think, we're talking about techniques that help neurodiverse people. But you also, in doing that, in solving that problem, have reframed what it means to show up for a job, right? We have this cultural set of expectations that when we get a job, we go in and we get told what it is we're going to do, what we're going to be responsible for. And, what I heard you say is, don't wait for them to ask you to solve a big problem. Start working on that early. Let them know that you care and that you've got a contribution to make. And I just think that's a really important framing of what it means to show up to a job.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, for Gen Z, you guys are going to have the most marvelous opportunity or the worst opportunity. And I keep hearing your generation talk about universal basic income. We have a form of that for the elderly. It's called Social Security. And in 8 years, and we've been knowing this for generations. Last time we fixed it was in the 80s. Okay. 65 went to 67. They are going to cut my benefits back when I get there by 25%, unless they do something. And they're going to do something. They're going to probably tell me I have to retire at 70. They're probably going to tell me we have to pay more, everybody, the employer and employee, for Social Security, something like that. We can't afford Social Security. So this idea of a universal basic income for people that lose their jobs to AI, we can't even pay for the elderly now. All right. So just so you know, that's coming. So what I'm really just trying to tell you is the job market, especially just this year, because they just came out with ChatGPT 5, it's even more now. I'm seeing the best of your generation, people with solid technical degrees from top universities that can't get jobs.
Yeah.
So what I'm just telling you to do, this is not an option anymore. You go in and you do that. You learn to craft the research and to apply it. You are now going to be very valuable and make a lot more money. But your peers in your generation who don't, I don't know what's going to happen to you, but it's really not going to be good.
Right, like you say, it's a huge opportunity, and it's also a threat if you're not prepared.
It's a major.
Address
People don't understand the degree. I mean, these companies are spending $600 billion this year on data centers.
Yeah.
All right. OpenAI is hoping to make $20 billion at the end of the year. Anthropic is doing like $5 billion. Peanuts.
Wow.
As they increase their revenue, what is going to happen is we're going to become a lot more efficient, and that means a lot less jobs. And like for me personally, I use like a tool, Deep Research. It goes and gives me a 20,000 word report in like a half an hour to an hour. That would take a Gen Zer, a week to do.
Oh, at least.
I don't need to hire that person to do that. Okay. So you are forced to advance yourself much more than in previous generations. And I'm just telling you the cold, hard fact. This is what you need to do to be on the right side of this. Or what you do is what a lot of your generation has already decided to do. There are millions less college students now than there were in 2019. They're going into plumbing, auto repair. They're going into the trades.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, that works as well. But if you're going white collar, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
Very
well,
interesting.
I hope our listeners are paying attention, because I think that's a big idea. We want to give you a chance to tell us about another of your techniques called word analysis first.
Yeah.
Yes. So go ahead.
And also just how you mentioned in our conversations before about how you did bring up word analysis first, but how it can help with overwhelm, because I think that Gen Z is feeling very overwhelmed as they're entering this new workforce up against all of these challenges. So anything specifically about overwhelm?
Yeah, so I'll tie all that together. I go on to a number of podcasts for C-level executives. And one of the problems they keep coming up with is that they need nothing innovative, but basic solutions to problems that just come up all the time. And how do we make that much more efficient? So I'm going to tie this in, and I'm going to say that you really should be using your preferred AI model for this. Okay? So I want you to imagine any standard business problem. This is also how I teach dyslexics how to read. All right? First thing we're going to do is we're going to name a hero. Hero wants to do something. Write out a sentence, a paragraph, a bunch of paragraphs, whatever you want. You're going to look for two types of words: an action word that's going to take a hero in the general direction towards their goal, and then the most important words are the most important words in a sentence. If you're doing more than a sentence, write out multiple action words, multiple multiple most important words, and ask the AI, this is very important, which one is the best that represents what the action word is? Which one is the best that represents the most important word? Have it do this for you. I'm assuming you're a college graduate in the real world, okay? Then you're going to come down to your best action word, your best most important word. Which one best helps define what the hero wants to do? That's your base universal theme. Problem with the base universal theme is it's usually very general. Now we're going to show you how to make this specific to you. You're then going to take that base universal theme and ask the artificial intelligence to come up with, let's say, 10 synonyms or 20 synonyms and custom definitions. Okay, have it do that. And then based on that, ask it, what are the top 5 ones that represent what the hero wants to do? The word and the definition. Once it narrows it down to the top 5, you pick the one that best matches what's in your head. Okay? That is now the post-universal theme. Then you want to say, based on the hero, we got the universal theme. What is the optimum villain, a person or a concept? Whatever pertains to your situation that can best prevent the hero from accomplishing their goals. So then you go ahead and you do that. Okay? Now, tell it to turn it into a sentence. Then because, give me 3 good reasons. It comes up with 3 good reasons. Okay? Now, what you're going to do is to take each of those reasons, and you're going to take each reason and ask the AI to come up with a simple universal theme to represent it. And then you're going to go and find this thing called a quote. So remember in college when you're supposed to have a quote to illustrate each point?
Oh, always.
Now you're going to go, yes. Now you're going to go and find quotes in your ownership manual, in your procedural manager, whatever the written thing that you're working from, you're going to find a quote that deals with that universal thing. Okay? Then once you take those 3 universal themes, you're going to go and answer the basic questions. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Do that for all 3 and have AI do this for you. Then put them together. This is where we really get to how we're going to get to the solutions your bosses are going to love. Once you do that, tell the AI, this is what the hero wants to do. Keep the essentials, get rid of the fluff, knock this down to about half. Knock it down to about 3 sentences. From that 3 sentences, tell the AI to come up with a problem statement. And it'll come up with a problem statement. 1 sentence. From that, reduce it to a 1-word universal theme. It reduces it to the 1-word universal theme. Now tell the AI, apply the 3 sentences context through the universal theme as a lens and come up with 3 solutions. Then you want to do this to yourself. Reduce those 3 sentences down to 1 sentence, and then run that 1 sentence through your head using that universal theme as a lens and come up with 3 solutions. Find the best one. Take that and tell the best solution to turn that into an essay, or take 2 of the solutions or 3 of the solutions, turn that into an essay, hand it in. With practice, you can get this to under 2 to 3 minutes. And now you have solutions that you can apply. Just to show you how powerful this is what I taught to a C-level executive. They had a manager who was physically being too aggressive with a younger female employee. How do we deal with that? Okay. They ran through that process in a little under 5 minutes, came up with a memo, and they went to the manager and they said, you're doing this or you're fired. All right. And it was something everybody could support. Then there's how do I now communicate this to the young lady who went through this hell? And it went through the same thing to try to become comfortable. And it just made things so much more efficient. All right. You're going to have to replay that. But that's essentially how you use that in the workplace.
That's great. You know what was coming through my mind when you were talking about reducing everything to the fundamentals? My background, I've done a lot of martial arts since I was a kid, and my teacher all the time said, reduce everything to its fundamentals. And he would just always say that. And so when I would feel overwhelmed by a technique and it would feel complicated, when you're doing martial arts, the problem's always very apparent, right? But the solution sometimes isn't. But he's like, everything is a straight line or an inward or outward circle. And when I learned to look at it that way, the overwhelm response really quieted down. And then I was able to reduce the technique to its pretty straightforward fundamentals. And then I was able to achieve the goal, solve the problem, which was protecting myself. And it's pretty amazing when something feels so big, but then you realize the solution is so straightforward. But it takes a process sometimes to learn how to distill it that way. So it's really neat that you have that process in place.
Well, again, just to illustrate the point, a lot of times in a lot of business decisions, you just need common sense, just good, solid reasoning. And that allows you to go through that and allows you to change the. Like, let me give you an example. I had a Gen Zer who wanted to start reviewing movies, and she's like, I can't stand it. I said, yeah, let me guess. You go to a movie review and it tells you it's like this happened and this happened, this happened. She said, yeah, it's horrible. I said, yeah, and those people are Ivy League educated. Here's how you do it. You go through a similar process, you identify the universal theme, and then you discuss how the actor, the directors, and the writer did. And then there's your review. And she started doing that, and it became, very popular amongst her friends. She's like, I actually learned something, but you didn't ruin it. I said, that's basically everything. Once you narrow things down to a universal theme, it makes it a lot easier. But what I told you about what the post-universal theme is, everybody's going to pick a different word. Or if they did pick the same word, they're going to pick a different definition. So you have your own unique way of looking at that, which helps.
Definitely. Language is something we talk about a lot at the Leader Lab, being such an important part of being human. And it frames how our perspectives and how we see the world. And it's the way we're connecting with the people around us. And it's interesting that what you say, we all do have slightly different definitions, right? Of that language. That's cool.
That example that you took us through, Russell, is that in the craft of research, or is that in materials you've created?
That is a version of what I took by combining the principles of the craft of research with overcoming dyslexia.
Okay.
What you're going to find with the craft of research is, again, it was written for PhD students.
Yeah.
And it just assumes a tremendous ability that, quite frankly, most of us don't have. The disconnect I've had with when I presented that first report in New York City, I had some of my students scored in the 70th percentile of entering grad students from middle school. The professors came to me and said, we don't care. We want the craft of research. And I was like, how the heck am I going to do this? It literally took me about 20 years to figure everything out.
Wow.
Okay. And AI had to develop to a point before you could really do the creative the solution aspect of it. So what I mean by how powerful that is, again, you want to imagine the mice and men. Imagine writing something so original that they think it's original at grad school. We have you come up with an initial answer, and then we run it through the artificial intelligence using O5 Pro. Okay, and we do that like 5 times, and then everything it says we need to add, we just keep adding to the essay until it's really original.
That's very neat. And so applicable, like in this new market that the Gen Z is entering, right? Because this is going to be there to stay. And it's how that they're going to do work. So why not give them the tools to interact with it in a way that can create actionable, original solutions? That's really cool.
And just again, not to scare Gen Z, but a couple of months ago they came out with ChatGPT came out with Agent, and it's useless. I just found a way to make it better. What it would do is I would send it to go research this, write up an email to market, and the email's garbage. So I would ask 5 Pro to fix it, and then I had to tell it how to make some corrections. and then it's useful. But once that goes and it comes back automatically, that's going to be a lot more Gen Z jobs lost. So if you're going to be either one of those who can really work with the AI, guide it, train others on it, or you're not. My question for Gen Z is, are you worth the $200 a month pro subscription? If you become that valuable, you will do amazing. The students that I've taught at that generation, they would literally go in and refine their skills until they were worth it. And then they walk in and they would do tremendously well. And before they know it, they're getting these huge pay increases because they're so valuable. But the ones that want to come in and write press releases because they're English majors, they don't last too long. It is very brutal for this generation. So I'm just trying to give you some advice on how to make it so you can be successful.
Yeah, we appreciate you sharing that with our audience, Russell. We're actually, believe it or not, we're running out of time. Do you have one more example of maybe someone in the Gen Z generation that, just one specific example of using some of these techniques and having a success story? You gave us one earlier, but I wonder if you had another one.
Sure. I'll give you my most successful one. Her name is Casey. She came to me when she was at the end of 5th grade, reading at the 2nd grade level. I never saw this before. I will never see this again. Casey loved Theodore Roosevelt, so I signed her this. All 900 pages of it. Won the Pulitzer. She turned 11 between 5th and 6th grade. I showed her a modified version of my reading program. I do writing first. You want to do reading first. 6 months, I speak to her 15 minutes a week.
Oh,
15 minutes. Yeah, that was it. Okay. Her mother could afford to hire me for an hour a month. So I get a call from her mom 6 months later. Casey was in a silent reading classroom. They're reading Harry Potter or Twilight or whatever. And they came over and took her book and said, "What's this?" And he said, "It's a book for an outside reading program." None of the kids could get past the first paragraph. You could simply go, boom, tell me the definition of that word, anything. And she would tell you the dictionary definition of that word.
Wow.
So she increased her reading level 8 grade levels in 6 months. And her mom was told, "I thought your daughter was severely dyslexic. She's the best reader in her class by years." And her mom said, "What's going on?" I said, "What do you think she's been doing locked in her room 3 hours a night for months?" Okay. So what happened to Casey at the end of 8th grade? She was done with this book. I showed her everything is all fixed. She goes to college. She was ready for college at the end of 8th grade. She goes to college after high school. She's doing extraordinarily well. And she just told me the last time we communicated, she's applying for her first big girl job. And she's doing tremendously well. All right. So especially for neurodiverse, if you really master these skills, you can do amazing things.
That just gives us so much hope, because I think this is like something that our listeners will resonate with, that this is something a lot of them face. And I think these stories and your techniques can really empower them to enter the workforce and feel prepared. So I think that's awesome.
Russell, we really thank you for being with us and sharing what you've mastered and you teach to others. It's really it's very encouraging to hear that. Anything else?
Thanks for having me.
Anything else, Amanda, before we close?
I don't think so, but you've been a wonderful guest, and thank you so much. Oh, if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, can you just tell them your website?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is go to Dyslexia Classes, plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com. And there's a button there that says download free report.
Okay.
And just fill in, it's 3 reasons your child's having trouble in school due to dyslexia. Fill in a few questions, and you can set up a half-an-hour appointment with me, and we discuss what your needs are and show you how to get past them.
Easy enough.
Excellent. We'll put that in the show notes, Russell.
Thank you.
So thank you. We want to thank our listeners and remind you to be well and keep moving.
This has been Mind and Body at Work with the East Valley Leader Lab. please click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. This is our embodiment training to help new young workers integrate into your organization.
As always, if this content resonates with you and your cares, please like, share, and/or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcast. Be well and keep moving.